What's up, everyone? Today we are going to be making lime steak. It's one of my favorite recipes that I grew up with. So to start off, we're going to start with some limes. I'm going to try and find the ones that are most ready to be juiced. Just start with a couple of these. Probably going to end up using 3 to 4 since I'm making about 3 pounds of steak. So as for steaks, I have some flat irons and some London broils. You don't really need a fancy cut of steak for this to taste delicious. Which makes it really budget friendly, which is why this is a great go-to recipe. So to get started, I'm just going to roll the limes out like this so they're easier to juice. Cut it down the middle and juice it right into the cup. So what I like to do is I like to match lime juice with olive oil as I'm preparing this. So however much lime juice I get from juicing these 3, I will probably use about the same amount of olive oil, just depending on how much liquid I end up getting, right? Just go ahead and juice these out. Right now we're just going to be making the marinade. It's about 4 hours before I'm going to start cooking, so that'll give the steaks time to really absorb the flavor. You can do this up to 24 hours before you plan to cook. Juicing that out. Hands off real quick in between. I'm going to look to see if I have a way to zest some of these limes. A little bit of zest adds a lot of extra flavor. Yep, I got this guy right here. So I'm going to just go ahead and zest these limes before I cut them into the mixture, just to add a little bit of extra zing and flavor to it. So just like this. Kind of like you're using sandpaper. Similar thing when we are zesting limes. Adding some zest gives lots of extra flavor that you may miss out on from just juicing. A little bit of texture as well to the marinade. So, got some zest. I'm going to just empty it right in. Set that to the side. Grab the other lime here. We are almost to 50 milliliters, which is awesome. This one's going to be not quite as ready, but we will zest it anyway. It can be a little harder to get the lime out of this. Usually the softer the lime, the easier and the more juice you're going to get, but you know, when you're buying and on a budget, you can't always select for that. The packets of limes, the bags of them are a lot cheaper otherwise. Got some zest off this one. And empty that into a little mixture here. So far, we are up to around 60 milliliters, I want to say, which is great. Let's start. Just cut half again. Now you see, this is really the hardest part of the whole meal, is getting the lime juice out. So take some limes. Whoops, dropped one. Again, this is my disclaimer that I am not a chef, I am not a cook, I am not culinarily trained. I am just a college student that likes to be healthy and high protein, which is why I'm making these videos to help you do the same. And hopefully these videos are a little bit more relatable than your favorite chef who has the resources and time to perfect this all day. And this is just something that we can all make as attainable food, attainable, delicious, nutritious, high protein food. So, juiced 3 limes. We've got about 75 milliliters of lime juice so far. So, I'm going to add 75 milliliters of olive oil. At least, so this whole mixture is going to be 150 milliliters total. Add this guy in. A little over, but that's alright. Pretty solid on this guy so far. Now what it's time to do is figure out where exactly the steak is going to fit. I got some freezer bags out. I usually marinate these in freezer bags. Using one would be my preferred method currently, because that way I wouldn't have to worry about dividing up the lime and olive oil mixture. So we're going to start with the steaks and see if we can fit all of them into one freezer bag. Got a London broil and a few flat irons here. These are reasonably priced, as I mentioned, and take up flavor really well. Alright, so we've just got this guy here. You can use your hands if you want, as long as you wash them afterward. If you're being a little more careful, like I am not, you don't have to. Use a fork. So, this guy in here. I am really thrilled that this is fitting right now. And also, this contaminates too much. And depending on who you're cooking for is obviously going to depend on your safety precautions. If you're just cooking for yourself, this is probably fine. You grab a fork. To open up the flat irons, now we're going to see if we can fit this whole thing just into one, which would be ideal. Just grabbing these with my hands, just trying to get as much control over this as possible. Put these guys in. This was a value pack of 4 that I picked up from IGA. Ended up being around $12 for a couple pounds. Pretty happy with that, all things considered. All the steaks do fit, which is great, because now I don't have to divide up the marinade into multiple freezer bags. Now the next ingredients we're going to be marinating in here is going to be some garlic and some cilantro. Pro tip, get the pre-done garlic from the store. It'll save you a lot of time, because cutting garlic can be extremely difficult. So we're going to grab the pre-cut garlic straight from the fridge. A spoon. And we're going to grab the cilantro. This is actually washed cilantro, I believe. Yes, it is. This is fantastic. Smells fantastic. And we are going to just go ahead and unravel this. I'm going to cut off some of the stems. Put this in our little trash area. We're going to chop some of this up. I'm going to use about half the cilantro for this recipe. Save the other half for another recipe that I'll make this week. Probably some carne asada. Some of the stems, some of the leaf. Pretty happy with this. The stems of cilantro tend to have a little bit more flavor than the leaf, so that is what we are rocking with. Put it right back in the bag and into the refrigerator to keep good for another day or two. Back this up. Here's our rubber band here. Times. We've got this all bagged up. We're going to grab our freezer bag and we are gonna go ahead and start with the liquid. This is the olive oil and lime juice combination. It's settled to around 2/3 of a cup. The macros will be in the video description as well for those of you who are curious. Whoops, did I miss a little bit? Maybe a touch. It's alright. Just clean it up as I go. Just the towel there. The spill is not too bad. Alright, now we've got olive oil and lime juice in the mixture, as you can tell. I'm going to go ahead and clean up a little bit. I did manage to spill. Don't know how that happened. This is why I cook right next to the paper towels, so I can clean up as I make messes. Now the bag is nice and dried out, so my roommates won't yell at me for getting olive oil all over the trash. So I'm going to throw the cilantro in. Relocate the knife. And now it's time for some garlic. This is a very simple marinade. It is just cilantro, garlic, olive oil, and lime juice. And then we're going to throw in some spices as well. The spices will be salt, pepper, and probably some kind of herbal spice. Maybe a little garlic powder, a little onion powder. Not going too crazy there. I'm going to do 2 spoons of garlic, 1.5 spoons maybe. Save some for the rest of the school year. Now leave that there and go grab their seasonings. Alright, got some seasonings, got some pepper, Italian, salt, and garlic powder. So throw a couple dashes of pepper in here. I'm going to throw in some salt. I will also be seasoning the steaks before. Whoops, that was a bit more than I anticipated, but I think that'll be, that was probably around 2 teaspoons. Wanted to go for about 1. That's alright. Throw a little more olive oil in there, and most of it will be absorbed by the bag anyway. Throw in some Italian, and a little bit of garlic powder. Zip up the bag and mix things up. Get the seasoning and cilantro kind of distributed in there. You can use a bowl as well when you're making this. That can make things a little bit more simple because you can just stir, but this is working quite all right for me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of this excess air out of the bag by just kind of pressing it a little bit. Just a little more. Put it back up. And this looks pretty solid. So this is going to go in the fridge and marinate while I go to my internship. And I will be back with making the honey carrots and multicolored potatoes. Alright, so now it's time to get started on the oven roasted carrots. So I've chopped up some rainbow carrots into a pretty small size, as you can see there. We're going to be roasting these in the air fryer to get these done a little bit quicker. And what we're going to do first is make the honey carrot marinade, I suppose. So we're going to grab some olive oil, some honey, and salt and pepper. This is pretty simple, not a lot of ingredients. And a bowl. So, got olive oil, honey, salt and pepper. So first thing, we're gonna put a little bit of olive oil. You can measure it if you'd like. I'd go a couple tablespoons, not too much, not too little. Just a good bit of olive oil in there. And some honey. Again, you can measure it if you'd like. I typically don't because it's not that deep. Just try and eat healthy foods most of the time is my general philosophy. I'll put a little more honey. I like it to be pretty close to equal looking, so a little more honey. Now we're going to do a little bit of pepper. We don't want this to be overwhelmingly peppery because this is a sweeter carrot dish. A little bit of pepper. And we're going to put a dash of salt. This time I'm going to put it in my hand first to avoid any accidents. A little dash of salt, just so the honey can come through. About a dime or a quarter of salt in there. Now we're going to grab a fork. We're going to mix this up so that it all gets combined together pretty nicely. Fork or a spoon, doesn't really matter. I think I'm actually going to go with a spoon so that I can put this on the carrots easier. So this is pretty consolidated, so that just tells me I need to add a little bit of potentially olive oil because this is a little thicker than I'd like it to be. Now first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our oven ready. I'm going to use an air fryer as my oven, but set it to bake just because this is not a huge batch. Another important consideration when meal prepping, at least for me, is I like to do larger batches of meat and smaller batches of vegetables and sides. Because what I've kind of picked up on is that meats tend to keep a little bit longer, a little fresher than vegetables or potatoes. So this is not the amount of carrots that I would be having with about 3 pounds of meat. This is probably enough for one night. But I do prefer to do my vegetables in smaller batches. Same with carbs, potatoes, rices, things like that. Anytime I make foods like those. So we're going to add a little bit of olive oil. We want this to be a little bit thinner than it is. We can just continue slowly adding over time. This is already looking a little bit better. And now from this point, we have a couple choices. We can either dip the carrots into it, sort of like this, coat them around, and then throw them on the pan. Or you can throw it all in the pan and spoon or dump the seasoning over. The latter is a little bit quicker. So I'm going to go ahead and put all the carrots in the air fryer basket, which I have coated with some tin foil to prevent things from sticking, really. Oops. Now, another thing I wanted to talk about is why I chose rainbow carrots instead of regular carrots. An important thing when it comes to nutrition is variety. For me, I like to eat a variety of fruits and vegetables and proteins. I like to eat a variety of carb sources, and I like to eat a variety of basically anything. So anytime I have the chance to get something a little more colorful, I like to go ahead and do that because that indicates, you know, some slightly different nutrients, some slightly different things going on between the carrots. So anytime I really can take advantage of that, I go ahead and do that when I'm able to do so, either financially or with what the stores got available. So got our carrots right here. We're gonna go ahead and start putting the honey, olive oil, salt, pepper mix over it. Nice and direct here. Make sure to get every one of these. This looks pretty good. Gonna go ahead and mix it around. This is looking great. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to set our oven or air fryer to bake and 425 degrees. That's gonna get these nice and caramelized and delicious when we are eating them. So I'm gonna shove this in here, turn on the air fryer, set it to bake, time to 25 minutes, and temperature to 425 degrees, and get that going. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare some potatoes to be oven roasted and kind of get the meat going. The next thing that we're going to do is get the steak prepared to go in the oven. Now today I'm going to be reverse searing the steak, which means cooking most of it in the oven and then finishing up a little bit on the stovetop. This is the best way to avoid setting off the smoke alarm since I don't have a grill here. So what we're going to do is open up the bag of seasoning. We'll grab a paper towel, use that to grab the steaks. First, just set these on the baking sheet. Set them nice and flat on the baking sheet. Oops, don't get it dirty. Now we've got these laid out on the baking sheet, and the temperature that we're going to try and cook these to is around medium rare to medium. So we're going to preheat the oven to 275 degrees, which we are doing, and use a meat thermometer in order to check the temperature along the way. We're going to want to pull these at around 100 degrees, and then at that point finish them up on the stove. So that's going to be pretty much the goal. So once the oven is ready, these will go in. And in the meantime, let's get the potatoes prepped. All right, so I'm currently cutting up the little potatoes just a little bit smaller so they cook a bit quicker. The oven just went off from being preheated. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and put the steaks in. So I'm going to just watch these with the meat thermometer. And kind of monitor, and as they get to that temperature of about 100 degrees, I'll pull them off and give them a little sear on the stovetop. And in the meantime, I'm going to continue cutting up these potatoes and give the carrots a quick stir. The carrots have just finished up, so now we are going to go ahead and pull them out. They're looking beautiful, nice, flavorful, and caramelized. So we are going to go ahead and pull them out, set them on a plate, and cover them in tin foil so they don't get too chilly as we cook up the potatoes. So go ahead and pull these out. These should be pretty soft, pretty nice texture. Not too hard, not too soft. They're looking gorgeous, a little bit caramelized from the honey, which is exactly what we want. So we'll go ahead and throw these on the plate here. If I did this again, probably would grab some more carrots. This was about as much as fit in the air fryer, but probably would have snuck a couple more carrots on there. So now the honey carrots are finished up. I'm gonna actually just grab the tin foil from here. Nah, that's a little dirty, so we're gonna get new tin foil. We're gonna throw that tin foil out, set more on there before we get going on the potatoes. So, just grab the sheet. Cover this up. Tuck it in, nice and tight. And now this is set to set aside until everything is done and time to eat. Now I've got salt, pepper, and I'm going to grab some garlic powder, onion powder, and herbs for the potatoes. Got some seasonings. I'm going to pull this tin foil off, throw it out. Gonna line it again and get going on the potatoes. Be super careful with this because it's still burning hot. Now I'm going to go grab some avocado spray for the bottom of this. This just helps me make sure that everything's not going to stick. Generous coat on the bottom here. Using a good bit of avocado spray. Then when I've put the potatoes down, we'll probably put a little bit of olive oil over the top as well. So, I'm gonna just, dropped one, slide these on to the sheet. Grab the ones that I have dropped. Now, what we're going to do is spread these out and season them a bit. So, use a good little toss here. We're going to hit them with some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and onion powder, and some Italian seasoning. Salt. Little bit of pepper, not too heavy on this. Don't want them to be too spicy. Garlic powder, onion powder, garlic first. This is the mandatory reminder to season your food. You're going to get the onion powder. Italian seasoning. I'm going to give it a good shake. Top it off with a bit more avocado spray over the top. That way we minimize sticking as much as is humanly possible. Shake them again. We're going to set these to bake as well at 450 for around 20 minutes because we're wanting to crank this out as quick as we can. So, go ahead and set this. We're going to go bake, time 20 minutes, temperature 450, and start. Now it's time to get going a little bit on the meat. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up the stove, turn on to around 7, so we're at medium high on the stove. Here, I'll show you guys. Got medium-high temperature. And we are going to take a look at the meat that's in the oven for the moment. Just gonna back this up. We're gonna temperature check. And remember, we need a minimum of around 115. And we're gonna start with the smaller cuts of steak, like the flat irons, before getting into some of the larger ones. Internal temperature is 117 here, 125 here, 123, and pretty warm over here. So we're gonna get these flat irons right on so that we don't overcook them. Stove, we're gonna wait for it to get hot, and we're gonna just leave the oven open like I have it right now. That way these don't cook too much more. Whoops. And right now the goal is to just get these on, get a little bit of texture on the edges of it before we serve it. This is just gonna give it a little bit of crunch and while the potatoes are going. Now the London broil is definitely gonna need a little bit more time, so we're gonna grab the flat irons first. Just gonna wait until the stove starts to turn a little warmer. Put my hand over it, put my hand over the pan. It's not very warm at all, so I'm gonna probably give it around another minute. Now we're gonna go ahead and finish the steaks on the stove top. They've gone to temperature, so right now we are going to go ahead and put these on the stove top. We've had this burner heated up a little bit, and we're gonna grab the flat iron first because we don't want to overcook things. Just give this guy a little bit of texture on the front and back is the goal right now. And this is coming up and down. We're probably gonna hit it for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute on each side. That way it just gets a nice quick cook. So I'm gonna leave it in the pan right now. This part's pretty boring. These are just about the temperature we want them to be. For medium rare to medium, we're wanting about 130 to 135 degrees internal temperature. And we'll even go ahead and check this with the thermometer once we have flipped it. And in the meantime, I'm going to go stir up the potatoes while I wait on the steak. Potatoes are looking good. Nothing was sticking, which is exactly kind of what we're wanting. And we're going to go ahead and flip the steak already, actually. So we don't want this to be too long of a cook. We just want to get a nice little bit of coloring on the sides. That way the texture is a little bit better. And we're going to go ahead and temp check this. This is, again, just a real quick finish. 135. Gorgeous. It's about exactly what we want for medium. I'm going to give this a couple more seconds, and then we're going to take a look at the London broil. That's a much bigger steak, so it will likely take a bit longer to finish up on the pan. Let's go ahead and check its temperature right now in the oven. So in the oven here, the London broil is 120, which is pretty solid for finishing that up. We're going to give it the last 15 degrees or so on the pan, just like we're doing here with the flat iron. And in the meat, as this sort of gets another second, we're going to cut into one of these that I was able to test run earlier to make sure these are the temperature that we're going to want. I like to rest my steak before cutting into it. Gives it a chance to let the juices settle a little bit. And this is looking like a nice medium well. So we're going to go ahead and pull this one before it gets too well and set this on the plate to rest. Now we're going to cover this back up as best we can with foil. And we are going to grab the London broil out of the oven, and we're going to hit that real quick. The nice quick cook. Got this here. Now this is pretty big, so gotta bring the baking sheet real close to it. and let it go. We're going to drain the baking sheet so I don't spill it. Now again, we're not leaving this for too long because it's mostly cooked. We're just getting it kind of the finishing touches there. We don't want it to overcook at this point. We're just getting it a nice little crust so that there's a little more texture and flavor to it. A little bit of that smokiness feeling that you want in a typical steak. So we are letting this cook probably a minute or two on each side. And give it a second before we flip it. And I'm going to start putting things away in the meantime. Cooking up while you clean is a big tip that I have if you're somebody busy like me, because in this case, you're able to sort of minimize time in the kitchen. All in all, this probably took me around an hour, but this is also something I have not made in a while. Other recipes would typically be a little bit quicker for me. And the next time I make this, I'm going to Alright, I'm going to give this a flip now. Develop a really nice crust on the side. A little bit texture in through here. I'm going to also go ahead and give it a temperature check right in the middle where it is the thickest. And the temperature is actually looking pretty good. So we're going to leave this for a little bit, get another plate ready. This one, as I mentioned before, I like to meal prep larger portions of protein because that tends to be the most time-consuming thing to meal prep, and it keeps the best. So that's what we're doing here. Vegetables, very quick, just throw them in an air fryer. You're not eating vegetables, obviously environment and stuff here to taste. So just letting it ready for a minute. And go ahead and set the fire down here. The top holder, closer to the middle. Turn off that oven. Backside of this is pretty well crusted, so we're going to go ahead and pull this off and let it rest for the moment. Turning off the stove, and I'm going to go ahead and slice the steaks into bite-sized pieces or strips. That just makes it a little bit easier for meal prep, things like that, storage. Additionally, some steaks you don't really want to slice into bite-sized strips. That would be more your, ribeyes, fillets, things like that, because a lot of people who eat lots of steak, a little picky about that, but cuts that tend to be a little more economical are going to taste great either way, especially if they're seasoned like this. So, I'm going to go ahead and give this a go. Start looking at temperatures as well. Set this cutting board, and I'm going to set plate over here. This burner was not on, so I'm not worried about it. Oh, this is a beautiful color, well cooked, evenly through. And we're gonna just slice this up into strips against the grain like that. This is a gorgeous color, gorgeous cook on this. This is kind of exactly what we're wanting. Now, while I'm cutting this, let's talk a little bit about macros. So if you have noticed, maybe in this video, I'm hobbling a little bit. I've sustained a knee injury in a recent rugby game, which actually changes things a little bit nutrition-wise. Now, I'm not a registered dietitian or a doctor. However, as an athlete, I do know there are some differences with regular nutrition and injured nutrition. The way that it was explained to me is that an injury is essentially a protein cycle. So it might not be a bad idea to increase your protein intake if you're going through an injury. Obviously, you should probably consult with a doctor or a registered dietitian for that. However, I've seen many sports dietitians recommend a course of action similar to that. That is because the injury takes a lot of protein to heal. So today when I make my plate, I will have probably a little bit more protein and a little bit less carb and vegetable than I usually have. However, doesn't mean I'm not eating those food groups, because those food groups are very, very important. But the protein is probably going to be a bit more of a primary focus focus for me now that I'm trying to figure out what this injury is. Now I've got a variety of temperatures here, which is pretty much how it goes when you're trying to make a batch of things. This piece here is going to be a little more medium well, but I've got some nice medium, and I'm hoping that that London broil is going to turn out a little closer to medium rare for me. So arranging this up here. Potatoes are going to be done any second, so we're going to check those and see if they need a little bit more time. The way that I like to check the potatoes to see if they need more time is if they are soft on the inside or not. So typically, I'll just taste test one or try and cut it with a fork or spoon. It should be able to pretty easily cut. Get these. More space on the fire. More on the medium side, a couple more on the medium well side. There's the air fryer, so we're going to go take a look at the potatoes. The flat irons are all cut up, so we will see about the London broil in a moment. Go ahead and stack these up. Stack some steak strips on top of each other. Leave room for that London broil. This is definitely going to be a few days worth of lime steak for me. Now let's give it a one-bite review. Exactly as I remember it. It turned out really well. Now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the potatoes. So, look here. I'm going to look for one of the bigger ones when testing out, because if the bigger ones are done, there's a good chance the smaller ones are too. There we go. It's one of the biggest pieces I can find. I'm gonna leave that out right here. Shut this. Whoop, it was a little warm. Alright. Shut this so that it gets a little more heat. Let that cool for a second. I think it definitely needs another couple minutes. So we're gonna hit it to bake. Here we go. About 5 minutes on 450, and that's about the time that it'll take me to cut up the London broil anyway, so the timing is going to be all right there. I'm gonna go and grab this London broil. Okay. I'm gonna cut right through the center of it first to make sure that I don't need to throw it back on the heater, on the stove. Temperature here. Alright, this looks fairly medium rare to me. It's a good temperature. Got a good variety of temperatures here, so if it's a little too rare, I can just throw it in with the in the microwave batch, so that that's something that I'm heating up as part of prepping. And I'm just going to rock with this because this is a nice even cook, and it's definitely cooked enough. It's cooked to about 135, which is a nice temperature for medium rare. So slice it into strips. Man, I didn't think this through. Yeah, I really didn't think this through, but it's okay. That's why we do it. Lots to learn in the kitchen, and every time I get to make one of these videos, I get to help people who may be nervous about starting cooking. And that's really what this is all about. It can be very difficult to eat healthy these days, both from an economic standpoint and from a just ability standpoint. Cooking isn't an easy task by any means. Therefore, anytime I get to make any of these videos, I really do hope that it reaches somebody. It's starting to drip a little bit, so we're going to clean that up. Slide that cutting board back. And voila! Lime steak dinner is complete, and the potatoes are finishing in about a minute. So let's go ahead and start putting together a plate, unplating everything that we will be eating. Alright. If you take a look over this way, we've got some mini carrots. Should stay nice and warm since I covered them. Potatoes are about to be done in a minute. One I just tested was pretty close to done, but not entirely perfect. So I'm glad I gave it those extra 5 or so minutes. And we're gonna go ahead and get a plate and start building it. Alright, first thing I'm wanting to do, putting some vegetables on the plate for sure. It's a must. Gotta do it. Gotta eat them. Got the vegetables on the plate. Next thing we're gonna do is throw some potatoes on the plate when they're done in 7 seconds. Got some vegetables, got some potatoes. Now I'm going to put some steak on the plate. Again, a little bit higher protein than I probably typically would. Going to get a little bit of both that London broil and some of that, some of the flat iron on the plate. Just put this guy out of the way. Clean that up after we're done. Slices of flat iron with slices of London broil here. I'm going to try both the cuts, see what I'm kind of liking better. That way I can plan next time I make this recipe. Grab some of the more rarer pieces on the bottom here. Alright, now we've got our plate made. This is a good injury recovery plate. Delicious foods, all made from home and from scratch, and that's really what it's all about. I'm really excited to eat. No boring chicken and rice tonight, so I'm very excited for this, and thank you for following along, and let me know if you try this recipe at home.